Hi everyone. The beginning of these are always so awkward. Okay, it looks like we got a couple people joining. Hi everyone, we'll get started in 1 second. I gotta get our special guest on here with me. Let's see. Hi everyone. Good, I like to see that.
Hi.
Oh, thank you. That's really sweet.
Hi.
Hi, Dr. Nkem. How are you?
Good. How are
I'm
you?
good. It's been a while since I've done one of these, so it's like you got to get back in the motion of it all.
Yeah.
But what I love to see is we already got a question, so that's always a good sign.
Okay.
We got
All right. That is a
got some
good sign. I love it when people
people.
are engaged and like excited and just want to jump in.
Exactly. I mean, that's the number one thing. You have both of us here right now on live. So take the opportunity. Don't be shy. Drop your questions in the comment box. We want this to be a conversation. We do not just want to be talking at you, okay? It keeps it so much more interesting. Well, hi everyone. I'm Marya, Khalil. I am the CEO here at the Vitality Institute. We are the makers of the VI Peel and the VI Derm skincare line. If I have never met you before, it's so great to have you here. Thank you. It means so much to me to see you here watching. And I have a very special guest today who I'm always excited to be with, sitting next to, even though we're not actually next to each other. Dr. Nkem Ugonabo, if you could please introduce yourself, tell everyone watching a little bit about yourself.
Okay, hi guys. I am Dr. Nkem. I am a board certified dermatologist based in New York City. I apologize if there's a honk at some point because I am in the heart of New York City and you just can't avoid that. So I will speak up. But yes, I did my dermatology training in New York City and stayed on. I also did a fellowship in cosmetics and laser specifically. So I love this field and I'm excited to be here.
Amazing. And I'm in Hollywood, so you might hear a honk or an ambulance or some other sound effects. So I love that we're both city girls.
Yeah.
So,
Wouldn't have it anyway.
yeah, exactly. So let's get started. This live is about hyperpigmentation. I want everyone who has hyperpigmentation in the audience to drop an emoji because I feel like it's affecting more and more people every day. It's becoming so common. It doesn't matter your skin color, your ethnicity, I've been just seeing it a lot more. So let's start with that. What is hyperpigmentation?
So hyperpigmentation, by definition, just means that there is some part of your skin that is darker than the rest of your skin. That's why they say hyper, because it's a little bit more brown or a little bit more black than the remainder of your skin. So it stands out in that way. Some people will commonly also refer to it as like dark spots, but it basically just means that part of your skin is darker or hyper pigmented relative to the rest of it.
Got it. And so are there different kinds of hyperpigmentation, or I guess sources of the hyperpigmentation?
There are definitely different kinds. There, obviously, a lot of people know melasma is one very, very common kind where you tend to have sort of like usually symmetrical brown spots on your face. Another kind, which is very popular, is what we call post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. And I find most of the time this is what people are referring to when they say like I have dark spots. Basically means you had some sort of inflammation or injury to the skin. It could be a pimple, it could be like some kind of scratch. And initially it was inflamed, and then when it healed, it left behind pigment. So it's post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. And it does get better over time on its own, but it can be really slow and stubborn for some people. So that is a very, very common issue that I see as a dermatologist and that I see, I guess, more globally, people online asking questions about.
Yeah, I see someone just commented that they have it. When they get a pimple, it stays for a whole year. That's PIH right there, right?
Yes, exactly. Commonly called PIH. Yes.
Post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. Or post-inflammatory, right? Post-inflammatory
You got
pigment.
it. Yeah, you got it.
I feel like that's the one that, I mean, I have that, absolutely. I have cystic acne, the pimple goes away, but the spot takes forever to fade.
Yes, yes. No, I know people are always like, "What? You're a dermatologist," but I get it too. And there are things that you can do to help have it not linger as long. But we'll get into that later.
Yeah. And you know, with melasma, it's so interesting because with my second pregnancy, I actually developed melasma. It doesn't run in my family. My mom didn't have it, and I was just like shocked because obviously genetics play a huge role
Right.
in our skin.
Right. Right.
But
Not all
hormones,
genetics. Yeah.
no,
Hormones play a big part too. Melasma used to be called in some cultures the mask of pregnancy because they were noticing that women would get pregnant and then all of a sudden they would develop this like brown pigmentation that would be there. That's before we really sort of scientifically understood what was going on, but there is a significant hormonal contribution. There's some genetic as well, which is not exactly a one-to-one.
Mm-hmm.
We just know that sometimes when people have melasma, they're more likely to have had a family member with melasma, but there's also a big contribution from hormones.
And I know it's so frustrating for women because when they're pregnant, you really can't use a lot of things that help with it. So I always just say, like, stay patient. You'll get there.
Right.
It's not worth
More
it.
sunscreen.
More sunscreen. So who can get hyperpigmentation?
So everyone can. And I think that is important to clarify because I think there's some misconception that it can only happen to certain types of skin types or certain types of people. Everyone can get hyperpigmentation. Hyperpigmentation just means that you just have, you know, this variation in your skin and some of them are darker or some spots are darker than others. Now that being said, I will say it tends to come up probably a little bit more in patients of color. And that's often because, you know, perhaps with their skin type, they're more prone to getting PIH if they do have some sort of injury and it tends to linger a little bit more. So I would say, generally speaking, everyone can deal with it and everyone does deal with it. But in communities of color, it tends to be sometimes a bigger problem than in others.
Is that one of the top skin concerns that you see in skin of color, would you say? Or
Yes. I would definitely say it's top 3 is hyperpigmentation and just pigmentation in general. And, you know, with acne, it's always tricky because sometimes I have patients coming in and they have acne and PIH and, you know, they only want to focus on the PIH, which I totally understand and I've been there as well. But I always try to emphasize that you have to, when you are dealing with PIH, you have to treat the source. Always have to treat the source, and it's not just because it makes more sense like efficiently, but if you don't, you're going to be sort of chasing your tail. And so even as a patient, you know, a lot of these treatments they cost money and it adds up, and so it's almost better bang for your buck to treat the acne first, because at least that way once you do start addressing the hyperpigmentation, you're not dealing with fresh acne and fresh PIH every single month.
yeah. So on that note, let's say you're experiencing PIH and acne and the patient walks into your office. What's your plan of action? How are you going to help them?
So my plan of action is basically let's stop the acne first. And so I will usually recommend either prescriptions and or in-office treatments that will address the acne. Now I will say there are a lot of ingredients that fortunately can do a little bit of both. And, you know, there are procedures that can address both too, such as the chemical peel. But for the most part, I just try to center them on, okay, we're going for the acne. And as we choose ingredients that will address both, that's great. And we're going to improve the PIH a little bit. But my main focus here is to calm down your acne. And then we can really like focus and zone in on the pigmentation as well.
And so if someone has hyperpigmentation and skin of color, would you treat them in a different manner, like in terms of what choices you would make for treatments or products, or?
Not so much with respect to products, but perhaps with respect to procedures. So I work in a practice that has many lasers, and I love lasers, but not all lasers are appropriate for skin of color, so you have to proceed a little bit more carefully. So I would probably choose certain lasers more specifically based on what I know would be safe in your skin. But beyond that, the products do overlap across all skin types, and the ingredients, more importantly, overlap.
So basically, though, you have to do the in-office treatments and you got to use good skincare at home.
Yeah. Yes. And the foundation of everything is good skincare. I know that not everyone has the access to in-office treatments, and I'm like very sensitive to that, but I do think that good skincare being your foundation goes a long way as well.
100%. So what's your biggest advice? Like, let's say someone is just developing hyperpigmentation for the first time in their life and they're so lost and frustrated. Where should they start? What should they do?
Yeah. The first thing I would say, and you know, I'm a dermatologist, so I apologize in advance for going on a rant, but you have to wear sunscreen. I think there's a very good understanding in the community that sunscreen is great protection from, like, you know, skin cancers and other things like that. There's not as much of an understanding that it can actually protect from worsening hyperpigmentation as well. And it really, really can. Like, they've studied it, they've done, you know, research on it. The sun makes hyperpigmentation worse. And so if you are dealing with hyperpigmentation, usually the first question I'm going to ask is, what sunscreen do you wear? Do you wear sunscreen? And then let's talk about that. And if you don't wear sunscreen, you know, there's no reason to feel bad about it. A lot of times it's people just haven't found one that they like, or they just don't have a great, you know, understanding of why it's important. So it's more of a conversation, but I would definitely start there.
Wear sunscreen. So do you think blue light, you know, our electronics and things like that, do you think that aggravates hyperpigmentation at all? Or what's your thought on that?
Yeah, so we know that visible light definitely aggravates it. So visible light is a type of light that's not UVA, not UVB, but it still exists in the environment. And they have shown that visible light can aggravate hyperpigmentation, which is why sometimes like tinted sunscreens are advocated above regular sunscreens. But the blue light from devices, I think the contribution is probably quite minimal. So I don't hone in on there specifically. I mean, if we're wearing sunscreen and we're doing everything, and you know, we're doing our skincare, we're doing our treatments, and then there's still that little extra, that we could talk about that, but I usually don't start there because I don't think it is as significant a contributor as some other sources.
It's interesting, yeah. I feel like the jury's still out a little bit on the role it plays.
Yeah, and these things are always evolving, which is why it's kind of cool to be like in skincare, because there's always all this like new data, new research coming out, and we're always updating our thoughts.
So let's talk then a little bit more about the treatments. And by the way, again, if you're joining us now, please ask questions. We're here to answer any of your burning questions. So don't be shy. So with treatments, let's get into the treatments a little more. So what treatments are best for treating hyperpigmentation? Let's start with melasma. I mean, what's your go-to?
So my go-to for melasma, outside of topicals, because everyone's going to be on the topical, would be in-office treatments. Typically, it's going to be lasers or peels if you wanted to add an in-office treatment on top of whatever regimen that you're already doing. And I say that because I think that I find that melasma is one of those things. When I tell someone they have melasma, I try to have the conversation up front that it's a chronic condition, in the sense that we can clear it, and I often do, fortunately, am able to clear it, but it doesn't mean that you're never going to have melasma again. And there's a lot of people who are very diligent with their skincare and their, you know, procedures, but like, let's say they go on vacation and they just get a lot more sun than they were expecting to, and the melasma comes back. So I just try to prepare people that, you know, this is going to be a long-term thing, and we're going to be more so keeping it at bay than we are curing it entirely.
I think that that's a very important, realistic expectation to set for everyone. Just like acne too, there's no cure. There's not going to be one done usually. It could be a lifelong disorder that you have to manage. I always say I manage my acne and my hyperpigmentation. Of course, if I do like go out in the sun without sunscreen on, my hyperpigmentation will come back. It has a memory.
exactly. I like that. It has memory.
Yeah, definitely. So
It's
I
always
saw a
lurking.
question that I thought was good. The question was, will tretinoin help treat hyperpigmentation?
Will tretinoin help treat hyperpigmentation? Yes. So tretinoin is a type of retinoid, and they have a multitude of benefits, including like they improve acne, induces collagen, helps with fine lines and wrinkles. And one of the benefits that it has is it does help a little bit with hyperpigmentation as well. I typically will not use it in isolation. It's usually I'm like putting it in a cream, other ingredients, for example, or I'm using it for dual purposes, like I'm trying to treat like their and their PIH. So it's not typically my go-to for like sole individual treatment for hyperpigmentation, but it does help and it does contribute. And so it's usually one of the several ingredients in the cocktail.
It is such an incredible ingredient. I think everyone should use it. Is there anyone that shouldn't be using tretinoin? Obviously, if you're pregnant or nursing. But
Right.
I just think it really do. I mean, the research is there, the data is there. It really is a game changer in skincare.
I think it's if you can tolerate it, I think you should definitely be on a retinoid. It's such a multifaceted ingredient with so many benefits that people can get use of.
So what are the ingredients that you like to use when you're treating hyperpigmentation?
So retinoids are typically one of them. There's a lot. Let's start here. So the number one that people often think of is hydroquinone, right? Which is tried and true, sort of like skin lightening ingredient. However, the issue with hydroquinone is sometimes it can be irritating for people. Sometimes there's just a lot of cultural issues there, or people just don't want to use it for whatever reason. Not something that they are interested in or comfortable with. So I do think it's important for me as a derm to have non-hydroquinone ingredients as well that people can use. Oh, and the third thing is sometimes you have to take breaks because you don't want to use hydroquinone indefinitely. So you need alternative options that you can use when you are taking a break or you just don't want to use it, which is fine too. So the other ingredients that I like, including tretinoin, are vitamin C is really helpful. Tranexamic acid is really helpful. Kojic acid is really helpful. There's something new called cysteamine, which is helpful as well. So there are quite a few glycolic can be a little helpful with hyperpigmentation too. So there's a lot of other ingredients that we can use for hyperpigmentation, which can be really helpful.
Yeah. And thanks for mentioning all those ingredients. We just launched a new product here at VI, the Dark Spot Lifting Serum. I have it right here. I'm really proud of this product. The ingredient profile is incredible. Like you were mentioning, it has tranexamic acid, it has kojic acid, has niacinamide, and the actual formula also has lactic acid. It's just like such a nice combination of products. And we've been seeing such amazing results. But I also just like, I'm obsessed with the texture of it. I feel like it makes your skin look brighter like right away when you apply it. Yeah. We worked on this product for so long. Some might say too long, but the proof is in the pudding. When you put the work in and you do the research, I think it's worth it. And it's kind of surprising that not all skincare products do the research, right?
I will say I appreciate when companies actually take the time to do research because it obviously it slows down the rollout of products, but in addition, I appreciate that it was studied before it was rolled out because it makes me feel more comfortable with people using it.
I'm sure as a dermatologist, as a consumer, it's important to know that the product was tested on your skin tone and type too. I think that means a lot to people. So we're really proud that our study, we include skin of color in all our studies. Like that's one of our priorities. Whenever we launch a product, we want to make sure it's going to be safe on all skin tones. Yeah. But we did do the study. Again, it means that your launch will take longer when you put the work in, but in the study we did see 84% of people saw a difference in their hyperpigmentation and they just love the product. They love using it. I think that's really important with skincare. the best skincare is the one you're going to use.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So same
Yeah,
thing
no,
with sunscreen.
I was just gonna say with sunscreen, it's if you find yourself sort of dreading putting on your sunscreen every day, it's just not gonna be great long term for compliance and things like that. So I do think it's important to actually like the feel of the products that you're using because you know as things get busier and life happens, because let's be honest, life is always happening. Um, you don't want to have something that you are like begrudgingly applying. So, you know, the texture and the feel of it is nice too.
Yes. And someone was saying, so the name of the product is Dark Spot Lifting Serum. And the product is available through our VIP providers. You can go on our website and type in your zip code and find a provider near you. If your provider's not carrying it, you can ask them to carry it. Because I always say shop small first, shop local. I think that that's really important. And then, of course, if you can't find it, you've asked your provider if they'll carry it, and you need another option. It is available online. But let's see, I see we got some good questions here. Someone asked, can they use other acids with tretinoin?
So you do want to be careful. Tretinoin, one of the side effects that's commonly seen is just like dryness and irritation. And so I usually try not to couple it with exfoliants because it basically compounds the risk of you getting that dryness and irritation. So I usually like, I think one of the things that became more popular recently is this whole skin cycling trend. You don't have to follow the trends, but I think the importance behind it is that you don't want to have too many active ingredients at once on your face because it can be a little bit overwhelming. So if we're going to use something that had a lot of acids in it on like Tuesday, for example, I would probably just skip your retinoid that night, and so that you're not having two things on your face that could be irritating.
I think that's really good advice. And people give up on vitamin A in general, I think, too soon because of that irritation phase, the ugly period, I think people call it. But you know what? It's, oh my gosh, if you can get through that, you are going to love your skin. My skin completely transformed once I got on a good regimen of vitamin A. And we actually do have a retinoic product in our line, and it has a really emollient texture in it. It has vitamin E in it as well, which I don't think it causes as much irritation as the other tretinoin on the market, but there are ways you can combat that. Like skin cycling, I think is a wonderful way to do it, or even start doing it once a week if you can't, you know, tolerate it. I don't think you need to be using it every night, ever. I don't use my tretinoin every night, and it works for me. And I've really been able to tolerate it that way. We talked about hydroquinone for a little, but you did talk about a break. And what do you recommend with hydroquinone and taking a break?
So every derm has a different opinion on this. I usually do about 3 months at a time. Then I would take a break and use something like non-hydroquinone based after that for a couple months, and then kind of like switching on and off. That way, you know, it kind of avoids the irritation, avoids like long-term side effects, but still being able to get the benefit in 3-month increments. But there's no science well, there's some science, but there's no hard fixed rule, I should say. So there's some variation amongst different doctors, but that's my personal preference.
Yeah, and you're right. Every dermatologist might have their own philosophy. Doesn't mean anyone's wrong or right.
Right.
I think you've got to trust your dermatologist, and practitioners first. Don't go Googling Dr. Google, please, because I just think there's a lot of harm that can be done when you go online and try and, you know, create your own diagnosis and your own skincare regimen.
Right. Especially if you have sensitive skin. I see a lot of patients with sensitive skin, and I'm like, your skin type is not the same as someone who can just go and like lather a bunch of things on and see if they work. If you have sensitive skin, you really want to start really small. And I would honestly just test spot everything. So like if you get a new serum, like just put a little bit on one part of your face first, just to make sure there's no like reaction. Then you can start using it.
I think that's good advice too. And with hyperpigmentation, melasma, these these are medical disorders. Like I worry when people have these conditions and they're going to Sephora to try and figure out how they're gonna solve them. And I'm not saying the products aren't great in Sephora. I just think that if you really want the diagnosis and you want a regimen that's gonna truly manage it, you need to go to a practitioner.
Yeah. And if you've tried different things on your own, but you're hitting a wall, or it's not getting better, or it's getting worse, even more so, I think it's a good idea to make an appointment just to confirm the diagnosis, because it might be you're treating it as something and it's something else, and then B, get some help with treatments and possibly a prescription.
Yeah. And I see that someone asked where they can get the product. Again, you can go on vipeel.com. You can put your zip code in and try and find a practitioner near you that carries it, or you can always order through the website as well. I love all the people telling us that they love the VI Peel. I'm so happy to hear that. And what's your opinion on physical exfoliants, like a facial sponge? Like,
I usually lean a little bit more towards chemical exfoliants, just because I think some of the physical exfoliants, it's hard to control when you're using it, and you don't know if it might actually be causing hairs on the skin, and if you have sensitive skin. So I have a slight preference more towards chemical, but if you do use a physical, just my advice would be to be gentle and start small.
And because we talked about inflammation,
Mm-hmm.
I think that people don't really understand the role inflammation plays in some of our skin disorders and what we're seeing on our face. And so because I used to be that girl, I had cystic acne and I would try and scrub it off. I mean,
Right.
That's your first thought, especially when you're a teenager.
Yeah.
And you hate to see in the mirror, you think you can like scrub it off somehow physically.
Yeah.
But all that does is worsen the inflammation.
Yeah. And the same thing with like popping pimples or picking them or trying to like extract on your own. The main reason I at least advise against it is because it makes an injury to your skin, and it makes you more likely to get a dark spot. That PIH that we were talking about in the beginning of the live, you're more prone to get PIH. You're going to be like manipulating your skin by yourself. So I try to advise against it as much as possible.
100%. And the new product, Dark Spot Lifting Serum, you do not need a prescription. This is not a prescription product. The main ingredient is tranexamic acid. There's 5% in it, which is actually the highest level in any professional skincare product that has tranexamic acid. It's such a great ingredient. Do you love that ingredient too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's gentle, but it's still effective. So, I've seen very little irritation in people with it. And let's see what else. Ooh, sorry. I see someone has an appointment for VIP in the morning. Amazing. If you can drop, what are you treating with your VIP? Do you have hyperpigmentation? Is that why you're getting the peel? I'm just curious. And then definitely once you're done, you don't want to use any skincare, especially with actives, for at least usually around 7 days after the peel. I don't know what you suggest normally.
The same thing. I usually say about a week.
Yeah, exactly. And you do want to start using something active and medical grade after you get a peel. After you get any kind of in-office treatment, you really want to keep that investment going and use good products. That's the best time, honestly, to start. Like, why wait? But definitely wait until you're done peeling. There's no redness. There's no irritation.
And when you are peeling, just in the interest of talking about PIH and inflammation, please don't peel it off yourself. If you get a significant peel, I know it's tempting to kind of rip it off, but please just kind of be gentle, as much as possible.
Yeah, back to the injury and the inflammation. If you peel off the skin before it's ready, you can cause that. So I love that you said that. Thank you. I always think it's just like the same thing with the picking. Like, let's not touch our faces too much and cause more injury, cause more issues at the end of the day. Well, I don't really see any other questions coming in, and we're right around the 30 minutes. So
Oh, thank
I hope everybody learned. I mean, you're just such a great co-host. Thank you. I learned a lot too. And make sure you follow. Can you drop your
Oh,
handle?
sure. Let me write it down.
I don't see it. It's in the live. I don't know if anyone else can see it, but
I don't
it's so funny how these lives work. But definitely follow Dr. Nkem. There she is. There's her handle. This live will be up if you want to watch it later. And yeah, thank you. Thanks everyone for joining us, especially you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and thanks for guys. Thank you for the questions and
Yes.
the comments as well.
Yes. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.